Just a year ago, you couldn't open your phone without seeing Caitlin Clark's name somewhere. She was the face of women's basketball, the record breaker, the shot maker, the phenomenon who turned college arenas into packed stadiums and made ESPN scramble to cover every move she made. But now, she's back in the headlines for something that, surprisingly, almost no one is talking about. And that silence says more than you think. Caitlin Clark is returning to the golf course this off-season, playing in a celebrity event known as the unpack prom. It's supposed to be a fun, relaxed outing, the kind of thing athletes do in the off-season to unwind. But here's the twist. She's not going alone. Joining her are two of her Indiana Fever teammates, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie, not as fellow golfers, but as her caddies. That's right, two WNBA players, one of them with an uncertain future on the team, will be carrying clubs for the league's biggest star. On the surface, it looks like a light-hearted, feel-good moment. A few athletes having fun, bonding outside the court. But beneath that, there's a strange tension, because something feels off. A year ago, this would have been front-page news. Every sports site, every podcast, every talk show would have been breaking it down. Clark brings teammates as caddies. Fever stars hit the green together. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham squash rumors. It would have gone viral in hours. But today, it's barely a blip. No trending hashtags. No real coverage. Just a few scattered mentions online and some quiet comments under posts. And that silence tells a bigger story. One that has nothing to do with golf and everything to do with how quickly the WNBA's momentum has faded. Because if the league that once lived off Caitlin Clark's every move can't even turn this moment into a headline, then something has gone seriously wrong. This isn't just about golf. It's about energy. It's about attention. It's about how a league that finally had the world watching somehow let everyone look away. Caitlin Clark is still here. She's still the name that built last season's buzz. But the world around her? It's quiet. Too quiet. And that silence, that eerie calm after a year of chaos, might just be the most revealing part of this whole story. Caitlin Clark's latest off-season move sounds simple enough. A charity golf outing, a handful of big names, and a relaxed day in the sun. But once you look closer, it becomes more than a casual event. It's a snapshot of where women's basketball stands right now. Full of talent, yet strangely disconnected from the attention it deserves. The event itself is the unpack prom, a celebrity-style golf tournament featuring athletes and public figures paired with pros like Nelly Korda and Lauren Yen. Clark's participation isn't new. She played last year too, and impressed people with her calm focus under pressure. Even Korda herself mentioned being surprised by how composed Clark was with crowds watching, saying she was drawn into women's basketball because of Caitlin's energy and confidence. But what makes this year different is the company she's keeping. Lexie and Sophie Cunningham, both Indiana Fever teammates, stepping in as her caddies. When fans first saw the announcement, they thought it was a joke. Back when Clark's entry was revealed, Sophie commented under an Instagram post teasing that she and Lexie would gladly volunteer as her caddies. Nobody thought it would actually happen. And yet, here we are. The joke became real. At first glance, it's a fun story. Players bonding, sharing a laugh, doing something totally different from basketball. But under that cheerful surface, there's a much deeper current running. Because for the WNBA, and for Caitlin Clark, even a golf event isn't just a golf event. Every small thing she does gets magnified, analyzed, and interpreted as part of something bigger. And this time, that something bigger is the mystery surrounding Sophie Cunningham's future. Sophie's name has been floating around trade rumors, social media speculation, and subtle tension within the Indiana Fever organization. She's one of those players who brings energy and toughness, but she's also been strangely absent from the team's online presence. Hardly any posts. No promotional content. No interviews. It's almost as if she's fading from the public eye, and that silence has fans wondering what's really going on. So, when she suddenly shows up as Caitlin Clark's caddy, people start connecting dots that might not even exist. Is this a sign that she's staying with the Fever? Is this her way of showing solidarity with Clark? Or is it just a coincidence, a few teammates having fun before the season picks up again? Whatever the answer, the optics are interesting. It's the kind of story that should be fun and lighthearted, yet it somehow carries a strange weight. Maybe because, deep down, people sense that this isn't really about golf. It's about perception, chemistry, and the health of a franchise that's supposed to be building around one of the most marketable stars in basketball. What's fascinating is how quickly people stopped paying attention to moments like this. A year ago, fans would have been dissecting every photo, every comment, every possible sign of team unity or tension. Now, it's just another post buried under yesterday's sports highlights. And that's exactly what makes this story important. Because when even the fun stuff doesn't get attention, when moments that should fuel engagement barely get noticed, it means something's changed, and not in a good way. Sophie Cunningham isn't just another player on the roster. She's the kind of teammate every coach wants. Fiery, vocal, unafraid to mix it up on the court, and willing to do the dirty work that doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. She's a shooter, a leader, and for a young team like the Indiana Fever, a vital source of veteran composure. But lately, her situation has become one of the most confusing subplots in the WNBA, and this golf event with Caitlin Clark just added another layer to the mystery. Let's start with what everyone's been whispering about. Throughout the past few months, there's been a growing sense that Sophie's place on the team isn't guaranteed. Her name has been left out of promotional campaigns. Her photos rarely appear on official Fever social channels, and fans have noticed the silence. In a league where visibility matters, being invisible can sometimes mean more than words ever could. Speculation started swirling. Was she unhappy with her role? Were the Fever planning to move on from her? Did something happen behind the scenes? No one knew for sure, but the absence spoke volumes. And then suddenly, she's back in the picture, walking beside Caitlin Clark on a golf course, not as a player but as a caddy. It's such an odd visual that it immediately fueled fresh conversations online. Why would a player with so much uncertainty around her choose to appear publicly in support of a teammate during the off-season? Some fans took it as a good sign, a quiet way of saying, "I'm still part of this." Others saw it as something else entirely, an awkward symbol of how unpredictable things have become in the WNBA's media narrative. Here's the truth. Sophie Cunningham's career has always had an edge to it. She's outspoken. She plays with emotion. She's the kind of athlete who'll take a hard foul 1 minute and crack a smile the next. She's also not afraid to speak her mind, and in today's climate, that can be a double-edged sword. When a player like that disappears from official posts, people notice. Her appearance at Caitlin's golf outing could mean many things. It could be loyalty, proof that she supports her teammates no matter what. It could be business, a chance to stay visible in a quiet off-season. Or maybe it's just friendship, nothing more than 3 teammates turning a lighthearted event into a fun day out. But here's the interesting part. The reason it's being dissected at all is because there's nothing else happening. The WNBA off-season has gone completely silent. When a single social media post of Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham carrying golf clubs becomes headline-worthy, not because it's big news, but because it's the only news, that says a lot about the league's current state. A few years ago, this kind of story would have been brushed aside as a fun distraction. Now, it's being analyzed like a clue in a mystery, because the WNBA has left such a vacuum of conversation that fans are desperate for something to talk about. Sophie Cunningham didn't ask to be part of that void. She just stepped into it, and the result is a storyline that feels bigger than it should. If Sophie's future with the Fever really is uncertain, then this golf outing might be her most public reminder that she's still here, still relevant, still connected to the team's core, and still standing beside the player who's supposed to redefine the WNBA. And that makes her appearance at Caitlin's side more symbolic than anyone might have intended. Because in a league fighting for consistent attention, even a day on the golf course can start to feel like a statement. There was a time, not long ago, when Caitlin Clark didn't need to swing a golf club to dominate headlines. Her college games drew millions of viewers, sold out arenas, and made people who never cared about women's basketball suddenly obsessed. Every shot she took was clipped, shared, and debated. Every appearance sparked discussion. She wasn't just an athlete, she was a cultural event. But fame moves fast, and what the past few months have shown is how quickly that spotlight can fade when the system built around it stops working. When Caitlin first joined the WNBA, the momentum was unstoppable. Ratings soared. Merchandise flew off the shelves. The Indiana Fever went from overlooked to overbooked, with tickets selling out weeks in advance. Even critics who had never watched a single women's basketball game were suddenly talking about matchups, rivalries, and rookies. It wasn't just Caitlin, it was a wave, one that lifted the entire league. For the first time, the WNBA wasn't a niche. It was mainstream. But the league didn't seem ready for it. Instead of embracing the excitement and building a unified front, everything fractured. Conversations that should have been about growth and opportunity turned into debates about favoritism, jealousy, and who deserved attention. Some players seemed resentful of the spotlight Clark brought. Analysts started framing her success as controversy instead of celebration. The narrative shifted from, "Look how far women's basketball has come," to, "Is this too much attention for one player?" And that shift, that subtle but poisonous change, is where the momentum began to die. Because when people come to watch greatness, and all they see is drama, they eventually stop watching. Fans wanted highlights. They got arguments. They wanted unity. They got divisions. They wanted stories of competition. They got stories of resentment. Somewhere between Clark's record-breaking season and her first professional off-season, the excitement that once felt electric turned into background noise. The most ironic part is that Caitlin herself didn't change. She's still out there showing up, putting in the work, taking time for fans, and staying involved. But the energy around her, the ecosystem that was supposed to amplify her presence, fell apart. The coverage dwindled. The buzz disappeared. And suddenly, moments that should have gone viral, like her golfing with teammates, passed unnoticed. It's a strange kind of silence, not the peaceful kind that comes after success, but the empty kind that follows when everyone stops paying attention. The same fans who once couldn't get enough of Caitlin's every move are now scrolling past her updates, not because they stopped caring, but because the league stopped giving them a reason to care. That's how fast momentum dies. One season you're the face of a movement. The next, you're swinging a golf club in front of cameras that barely show up. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark. It's about what happens when an entire league forgets how to ride the wave it created. The spotlight didn't fade because the star dimmed. It faded because no one bothered to keep the light on. The Caitlin Clark effect was supposed to be the WNBA's golden ticket. For years, people had been asking how to make women's basketball mainstream. How to get eyes on the games. How to bridge that impossible gap between hype and habit. Getting people to not just notice but to care. And then, almost out of nowhere, it happened. Caitlin Clark arrived. She was marketable, likable, electric. She broke scoring records and turned routine matchups into events that felt like national holidays. She wasn't just a player, she was a phenomenon who could make sponsors, networks, and fans care all at once. The Caitlin Clark effect became a real, measurable thing. Attendance rose. Merchandise sold out. Social engagement skyrocketed. Even casual fans, people who had never watched a women's basketball game, suddenly knew her name. It was everything the league had dreamed of. But instead of protecting that energy, the WNBA let it fracture. What should have been unity turned into conflict. What should have been support turned into division. The effect that could have built bridges ended up exposing cracks. You could see it everywhere. In press conferences, in interviews, in the way players and analysts talked. Some couldn't handle the attention she brought. Others resented it. The conversation stopped being about basketball and started being about why Caitlin Clark was getting so much attention. That's not normal for sports. When a rookie electrifies the NBA, the league celebrates it. When a young star dominates tennis or soccer, the narrative is about greatness, not jealousy. But the WNBA turned its biggest blessing into a battleground. The commentary around Clark became toxic. People dissected every gesture, every word, every missed shot, every foul. A single game could spark debates about her personality, her privilege, her role in the league's culture. Some critics even said it had become problematic to not dislike Caitlin Clark, as if supporting her meant picking a side in some imaginary war. That's when you knew something was broken. Because when your biggest attraction becomes your most polarizing figure, the issue isn't the player, it's the system around her. The media fed off the negativity. Social platforms turned every clip into an argument. Instead of celebrating the influx of new fans, the league seemed to resent them. Instead of embracing Clark's draw, many treated it like an inconvenience. That confusion, that hostility, turned away the very audience that was ready to give the WNBA a chance. Think about it. When new fans tuned in, they didn't see a league welcoming growth. They saw tension. They saw players snubbing each other, commentators picking sides, and headlines focusing more on controversy than competition. It's exhausting to root for something that keeps fighting with itself. And in that noise, the Caitlin Clark effect, the force that could have redefined women's sports, was mishandled, mismanaged, and eventually muted. Now, when she does something wholesome like joining a charity golf event, the attention barely flickers. The audience that once hung on every update has grown quiet, not because they stopped liking Caitlin, but because the league didn't give them a reason to stay. It's the same story that's played out in so many industries. When the system fails to value its breakthrough moment, the moment moves on without it. Caitlin Clark didn't need saving. The WNBA did. And when they finally got the spark they'd been waiting for, they forgot how to keep the fire alive. The WNBA offseason was supposed to be a chance to build on the momentum, to keep fans engaged, to create new storylines, to ride the wave that Caitlin Clark and others had started. But instead, it feels like the league just disappeared. The excitement that once made every game feel like an event has been replaced with near silence, as if the entire league pressed pause and forgot to hit play again. Where's the energy? Where's the news? Where are the updates that make fans feel connected to what's coming next? In the NBA, the off-season is almost as exciting as the playoffs. Free agency, trades, signings, rumors, there's always something happening. Every move, every tweet, every leaked conversation fuels another day of conversation. That's how you keep fans hooked. The story never ends. But in the WNBA, it feels like the story stopped the minute the final buzzer sounded. No major trades, no off-season marketing campaigns, no consistent social media strategy. Just silence. For a league that finally had the world's attention, the quiet has been deafening. And that silence is dangerous. Because fans, especially new ones, are fickle. They follow energy. They crave updates, controversy, connection. When you stop giving them that, they move on to something else. They don't stop caring, they just stop hearing from you. And once they stop hearing from you, they forget to look for you. This isn't just about content. It's about relevance. The WNBA had a historic season, the kind that changes the way people talk about women's sports. They had a record-breaking rookie who pulled millions of viewers into the conversation. That kind of momentum is rare. It's lightning in a bottle. But instead of keeping it alive with constant engagement, they let it fade into a whisper. Right now, the off-season should be full of headlines. Potential trades, new sponsorships, player appearances, training camp updates, even lighthearted content like behind-the-scenes vlogs or day-in-the-life features. Anything to keep fans invested. Instead, fans are left scrolling through social media, hoping to find something. And when they don't, they start creating their own stories out of nothing. That's why the Caitlin Clark golf event suddenly matters so much. It's not because it's a massive sports story. It's because it's the only story. When a player attending a celebrity golf tournament becomes one of the few headlines of the off-season, that's not a sign of excitement. That's a sign of emptiness. The WNBA can't afford this kind of silence. Not now. Not after finally getting people to care. They needed to capitalize on the noise, to build storylines that kept the league relevant year-round. Instead, they let the buzz die down until even something involving their biggest star barely made a ripple. Fans don't expect fireworks every week. But they do expect a heartbeat, a reminder that something's happening, that the story is still alive. Without that, the off-season feels less like a break and more like an ending. Caitlin Clark's golf event shouldn't be the only thing keeping the WNBA in conversation. But right now, that's exactly what it is. And until the league finds its voice again, that silence is going to be louder than anything else. If you scroll through social media, you'd think the WNBA is thriving. Trending hashtags, player edits, viral tweets, endless arguments. All that noise gives the impression that people are paying attention. But when you look closer, it tells a different story. The truth is, most of that engagement is hollow. It's loud, but it's not loyal. A lot of the so-called fandom surrounding the league today looks more like online theater than real support. You have people who retweet every viral clip, argue in the comments, and flood hashtags with emojis, but they're not actually watching the games. They're not buying tickets. They're not showing up. They're just participating in the conversation for clout or attention. It's the same kind of phenomenon you see in music fandoms. Massive online followings that make noise without substance. Someone once joked that Paige Bucher's fans act like K-pop stans. They post endlessly, retweet every update, and make edits with pop songs. But when the actual games happen, the viewership doesn't match the hype. It's all digital smoke, no real fire. That kind of engagement might look impressive on the surface, but it doesn't sustain a league. Trending hashtags don't sell tickets. Quote tweets don't build franchises. The WNBA needs people who show up, not just people who post. When Caitlin Clark entered the league, she brought real fans. People who tuned in, filled arenas, and spent money. The excitement was organic. It wasn't just noise. It was energy. But once the narrative turned toxic, once people started making her success a point of division, those same fans started drifting away. They didn't want to be part of the online chaos. They just wanted to watch basketball. Now the league's digital presence feels inflated. More noise, less connection. The WNBA's official channels post highlight reels that barely get traction. Players who should be household names barely trend. And when something does break through, it's usually controversy, not celebration. This isn't unique to women's sports, but the impact here is sharper because the league relies so heavily on public perception. The line between visibility and virality has blurred. People think that because there's chatter, there's growth. But that's not how sustainable fandom works. Real fandom is built on habit, loyalty, and consistency. It's built on the idea that watching feels rewarding, that being part of the story matters. And right now, that sense of belonging is fading. When fans don't feel like their enthusiasm is valued, or worse, when it's drowned out by constant negativity, they stop investing emotionally. They stop showing up to games, stop buying jerseys, stop watching broadcasts. They might still scroll past the content, but they don't connect with it anymore. That's the silent danger of false engagement. It makes the numbers look good while the foundation crumbles underneath. And in the WNBA's case, that false sense of popularity is part of what's hiding the real problem. A league that's losing the audience it worked so hard to gain. Caitlin Clark's golf event with Sophie Cunningham and Lexie is a perfect example of this disconnect. Online, it's treated like a quirky meme. In reality, it could have been a golden moment for storytelling. 3 athletes, 1 off-season, showing chemistry and personality off the court. But it didn't catch fire, because people aren't emotionally attached anymore. The truth is, engagement without emotion doesn't last. The WNBA doesn't need more retweets. It needs real roots. It needs fans who care about what happens between the buzzer and the next season, not just people who post about it when it's trendy. At first glance, Caitlin Clark's golf outing looks like a feel-good story. A lighthearted break from the grind, a chance for teammates to bond, a bit of personality in an off-season that desperately needs life. But if you look closer, it's more than just a fun day on the course. It's a mirror reflecting exactly where the WNBA stands right now. Uncertain, quiet, and struggling to hold the attention it once commanded so easily. Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexie stepping out for a golf tournament should have been the kind of story that dominates the sports pages for a day. It's visual, it's fun, it's unexpected. These are professional basketball players trading hardwood for fairways. The kind of crossover moment that keeps fans talking when the league's schedule goes dark. Yet the buzz never came. There were no viral clips, no trending hashtags, no major coverage. The story just drifted by, barely noticed. That absence of reaction says everything. It tells us how far the WNBA's conversation has fallen in just a few short months. Because when even Caitlin Clark, the most marketable player the league has ever had, can't spark enthusiasm for something outside the court, it's a sign that the emotional connection between fans and the league has weakened. What's most ironic is that the symbolism here practically writes itself. You have Clark, the new face of the WNBA, joined by Sophie Cunningham, the veteran whose future is uncertain, and Lexie, a solid teammate who's managed to stay above the drama. 3 players, 1 franchise, 1 off-season. It's almost poetic. But instead of celebrating the unity and the humor of it all, people barely reacted. Maybe that's because the league hasn't given anyone a reason to care. For months, the storylines that kept people engaged, rivalries, redemption arcs, breakout moments, have been replaced by silence. Fans aren't tuning out because they dislike the players. They're tuning out because there's nothing to tune into. The off-season feels like a void, and this golf event is just one more example of how opportunity keeps slipping through it. Sophie Cunningham showing up as a caddy could have been framed as a symbol of loyalty. Lexie joining in could have been used to showcase the Fever's chemistry. Caitlin Clark's presence could have reignited the casual fans who once followed her every move. Instead, all of that potential was left sitting on the table, unnoticed. The story that should have reminded people how likable and human these athletes are ended up reminding us how quickly the spotlight fades when no one's protecting it. The excitement that used to surround Caitlin's name feels diluted, not because she's changed, but because the energy around her has evaporated. And yet, buried under that silence, there's still something powerful. This small, overlooked event proves that the players haven't given up. They're still out there showing up, building relationships, keeping the spirit of competition alive even when the cameras aren't rolling. It's a quiet resilience that deserves more recognition than it gets. So when you see Caitlin Clark laughing with her teammates on a golf course, remember what it really represents. It's not just a celebrity outing, it's a reminder that the stars are still shining, even if the spotlight's dimmed. The league's challenge isn't creating talent or personality. It's learning how to make sure moments like this don't vanish into the noise. Because the truth is, these players aren't fading, the attention is. And if the WNBA doesn't find a way to reconnect with fans soon, even the biggest stories will keep slipping through unnoticed. If you step back and look at everything that's happened, the pattern is clear. The WNBA had lightning in its hands, and somehow, it let it fade into static. The Caitlin Clark phenomenon wasn't just a moment, it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to redefine how people see women's basketball. For a few short months, it worked. The arenas were full, the broadcasts were breaking records, and people who had never cared about the sport suddenly had a favorite player. But now, the silence is deafening. The buzz that once surrounded every game has thinned into a low hum that only the most dedicated fans can still hear. The Caitlin Clark golf story is a perfect symbol of that decline. A simple, relatable event that should have been easy to market, easy to celebrate, easy to turn into another chapter of connection. Instead, it came and went with barely a whisper. That's not just a missed headline, it's a missed heartbeat. Because leagues live and die by momentum. The NBA doesn't stay relevant year-round by accident. It manufactures stories, trades, rivalries, and narratives to keep fans emotionally invested. It builds continuity between the seasons so the audience never feels like it's waiting. The WNBA, on the other hand, seems to go silent between games, like it's unsure what to say when the court is empty. The truth is, Caitlin Clark can't carry the league alone. No athlete can. Not when the system around them doesn't know how to amplify their impact. She brought the audience, but the infrastructure didn't hold them. Instead of growing the story, it froze. Instead of nurturing fan relationships, it let them drift. But here's the thing, it's not over. The excitement isn't gone forever. It's just sleeping. Fans still care. The players still care. And if the league learns from this silence, if it starts treating every off-season moment like a chance to tell a story, it can wake that energy up again. Because even now, people want to care, they're just waiting for a reason. Caitlin Clark's golf outing might seem small, but it's a quiet reminder of what's still possible. It shows that the personalities, the humor, the charisma, they're all there. What's missing is the spotlight to show them off. If the league can find a way to turn moments like this into connection instead of noise, it can rebuild the bridge it let crumble. The WNBA's not out of chances. But it is out of time to waste them. Every quiet off-season is a missed opportunity to grow. Every ignored storyline is a lost fan who might never come back. The league doesn't need another viral debate or media feud, it needs consistency, storytelling, and heart. Because the truth is, sports aren't built on stats. They're built on emotion. And if you lose the emotion, the numbers won't matter. So maybe this golf tournament, small as it seems, should be a wake-up call. Caitlin Clark is still out there, drawing attention even in silence. Sophie Cunningham and Lexie are still showing up, building bonds, creating moments worth sharing. The league just has to learn to turn those sparks into something that lasts. And if you're one of the people still watching, still hoping, still believing in the potential of women's basketball, then you're part of the reason this story isn't over. If you found this breakdown insightful, take a second to help this channel grow. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe. Every subscriber helps us reach more fans, keep covering stories the mainstream ignores, and keep conversations like this one alive. Your support doesn't just grow a channel, it keeps the game alive. So if you care about stories like this, about athletes who deserve the spotlight, and about seeing the WNBA thrive, go ahead, subscribe now, and let's keep building this together.